So last class we talked about the essay again. It's due next Monday. Any questions about it? Sorry, it's due next Tuesday, not Monday. It's a Tuesday, Thursday class. Any questions? Okay, yes?
Are we allowed to use the term I, we, or you?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. You can write this as personally as you want, first person. Yeah, that's cool. I see you got the textbook. That's great. Good for references and stuff. Good. Any other questions? Okay, great. So we're going to do a quick overview of the history of the internet. A big part of that, of course, is the World Wide Web and the migration of broadcast-like forms of entertainment and information. So audio and video eventually reaching the web. We kind of cover that. In our resources, there's also a couple of interesting readings that I may just mention, but they're up there in case you want to see anything else. So this is a video about the early computer systems that obviously predate the internet. Some sort of World War II computer designs. One called Colossus, which was in England, a really big. These are all computers that filled an entire room and required 50, 60 people to operate them, and the interconnections between modules were done with, quarter-inch jacks and wiring and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting history just to see how everything gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and it goes right through to Apple and stuff like that. So that could be fun to watch. It's about 10, 12 minutes. A nice case study here about how fake news goes viral. That's pertinent to our discussion because of the kinds of communication that the internet now makes possible. It also makes possible the circulation of a lot of disinformation, and how documents can float free from their origins and be picked up and retweeted and circulated that way. So that even if there's some kind of corrective at the origin, hey, this wasn't even true, sorry, made a mistake, by that point, whatever document and whatever story has accumulated around it is circulating like so far away from where it originated that any kind of correction doesn't even matter. It's picked up by different sources. So it's an interesting case study. And then this one is very interesting as well. Actually, well, let's just mention it a little bit later, but it refers to the private global organization that actually controls the domain name system that distributes domain names across the internet. And if someone were to get in there and mess with that, all of our web addresses would become unreliable. So it's actually a very key piece of the internet, and this is a story about the guardians, let's say, of the keys, basically, that together permit changing those addresses. The people are spread across the world, and they get together every few months to make adjustments and validate those things. So it's really Illuminati type of interesting little story there. It's kind of cool. Okay, so we may come back and just talk more about that, I guess. I don't know. Anybody got any ideas where the internet may have come from way back when? No? Well, believe me, I've got videos that'll tell you about it. So. From war, yeah. It was, a lot of the original funding came from defense programs, financing, the need for a communication system that couldn't easily be wiped out by an attack, And if you go back, if you check out the video on the history of computing itself, right, the Colossus was created in order to break Nazi codes during the Second World War. It was, the amount of calculations that would go in trying all the different possibilities to uncover the key that they were using to encrypt their war messages they figured, well, we need a computing machine that can help us do that. And what was incredible is, although the Colossus is like incredibly slow by today's standards, after a couple of years in action, they figured that it had already done more mathematical calculations than all of humanity had done up until that point. Just because as a computer, it just did calculations like constantly and constantly. So it's very interesting history, these machines and stuff. So, but we're going to jump over, jump over the development of the computing machine, and really talk more about, the internet and its creation genesis. So let's just look at this. These things come at you so fast, and then we'll go at the slides and see the slow-paced version.
By Audible. Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. Thanks to this wonderful thing called the internet, you are watching this video right now. But how did the internet get to where it is today? There is so much internet history that we couldn't possibly get to everything in this short of a video, so we're definitely gonna have to make a second one. Anyway, let's get started. The internet actually got its start over 50 years ago, and computers back then filled up entire rooms. Scientists and researchers used it for years to communicate during the Cold War. It was useful because if one computer went down, the others wouldn't follow. In 1962, a scientist named J.C.R. Lickletter proposed the idea of a network of computers that could talk to one another. In 1969, the first ever message was sent from one computer to another over the ARPANET, the government's computer network at the time. ARPANET stands for Advanced Research Projects Agency. One was located in a research lab in UCLA and the other at Stanford. All the message said was log in, and it didn't fail to crash the network. Stanford only received the first 2 letters of the message, but hey, you gotta start somewhere. By the end of the year, only 4 computers were connected to this network. In 1971, the University of Hawaii's Aloha Net was added, followed by various networks in London and Norway 2 years later. Also happening in 1971, Ray Tomlinson was developing the first system to send mail back and forth between the users of ARPANET. This would eventually be called electronic mail, or email for short. The @ symbol was used to tell a person's name and the host name apart. With all of the networks floating around, there needed to be a way for all of the computers on them to communicate with other networks. This is where computer scientist named Vinton Cerf comes in. He invented a way to introduce computers across the globe to each other in a virtual space. This invention was called Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP, which was followed by Internet Protocol, or IP. In the 80s, scientists used Cerf's protocol to send data back and forth, but the 90s is where it really all began. In 1991, a computer programmer named Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. This wasn't just a data sharing space for scientists anymore, this was an entire network of information that was accessible to anyone with an internet connection. Now, you're using a browser right now to watch this video, and some of the popular ones are Firefox, Google Chrome, and Safari, but in 1992, Urwise was created. Urwise was an internet browser and the first to have a graphical interface. A few browsers came before and after, but in 1993, Mosaic was created, and it would popularize surfing the web. Mosaic influenced many of the browsers to follow, including Netscape Navigator in 1994. This became the most popular web browser at the time, accounting for 90% of the web usage in 1995. In the early 90s, companies like AOL and CompuServe were starting to provide dial-up internet access. Dial-up is a method of connecting to the internet via a telephone line. Your telephone line was plugged into a modem and the other end was plugged into the phone jack. There was a period in history where you couldn't use your telephone and the internet at the same time. Without the internet, we obviously wouldn't have things like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, but way more importantly, we wouldn't be able to access information in seconds. We wouldn't be able to communicate with people from around the world, share ideas, and educate those who might not get a chance elsewhere. Also, without the internet, I'd actually have to talk to someone when I order a pizza, which, by the way, was the first thing ever purchased on the internet. How would your life be different without the internet? Let us know in the comment section below. This episode of Life Noggin is brought to you by Audible. Go to audible.com/lifenoggin to get a 30-day free trial and 1 free audiobook download of your choice. If you want to learn even more about the internet, we recommend this amazing book, Tubes, A Journey to the Center of the Internet. Make sure you come back every Monday for a brand new video.
Okay, dudes, that was fast, wasn't it? Okay. Anybody ever, in terms of dial-up, have you ever heard that modem sound? Yeah, okay. So it's not, I'm waiting, one of these years I'll ask that question and everyone will look at me like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it's soon enough, right? It would be like if you were alive in the early 90s, yeah, but soon, it's not gonna be that way. Okay, boy, was that ever fast, right? But it got the basic information out there. Any questions or comments on what you saw before we jump into the slides and instantly destroy any enthusiasm you may have for the topic? Yeah. No? Okay, I'm happy to go into the slides. Just we'll identify some of the stuff that may be on our little Kahoot for the end of class and stuff. But so ARPANET, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, was funded almost exclusively by the government. And not only did they bring us things like the early internet, let's say, they also developed things, they funded research into the computer mouse, for instance. So the graphical user interface that, now we know it through web browsers or through your operating system. But both of those were, early computing was just like numbers. In fact, I mean, you entered stuff through punch cards, right? So it'd be like huge stacks of cards that would have, commands coded onto them, and the computer would kind of read those as they went in, right? There wouldn't even be like a keyboard or a mouse or anything. So not only did ARPANET, talk about connecting those computers together in the internet in a network, but also was things that we take for granted today, like how to interact with the computers, that stuff. So Vinton Cerf is known as the father of the internet with TCP, right? And then, as they said afterwards, there was IP as well. So this transfer, Jesus, what's the C in TCP? I'm blanking all of a sudden. A P is a protocol, Jesus, I've known this stuff for quite a while.
Transmission control protocol.
Thank you. Okay, transmission control protocol. Okay, so this is the idea that any information that's going over the network is split up into packets. So, for instance, when you download a JPEG, a picture of something or whatever, the information that's in that picture gets split up into packets and then sent to the address that is calling, your web browser will be calling for that picture to a server somewhere else, right? So everything's split up into packets. So there needed to be a system which would organize the transmission of those packets to make sure that they all got to the right place. And so that was TCP, which would be, first of all, just one computer connecting to another, so very directly. But just to make sure that, they shook hands in the beginning. It's like, hello, I'm the computer in Stanford. I want to send you a message over at UCLA. I'm going to start now. The message is going to come at you, in this rhythm with these, packets of this size. And the way the packets are identified is using this protocol, basically. And so that stuff would pass through the network connection and then be reassembled at the other end. And then IP, the big advance here was that it didn't just have to be from one computer to another on a kind of a dedicated line. It could be through a network of computers, the internet. So that was the idea that if you had a bunch of different, servers connected all together like this, if you eventually wanted to reach here, a lot of these are all interconnected as well. Your packets may take this route, or if it was more convenient because, let's say, this computer was offline for a second, they could take this route. And in fact, in the midst of transmission, they could, some packets could take one path and other packets could take another path, depending on what was the most efficient at the moment that they were transmitted. And, again, the protocol is necessary to reassemble them all at the end of the line, whereas, these packets may get interrupted, have to be resent through here, but they'll all get assembled correctly at the other end based on IP. Right? And you still hear there are all kinds of features of associated with these protocols. So TCP is still involved, IP is still in there, and in fact, it is also used in the Internet of Things. You know, this whole new development that we're having with smart devices in your home that will connect to the network with various functionalities. It's using layers of IP that are not used on web browsing necessarily, but they're present in IP already from the start, and they're being used for other stuff now. So think of these protocols as, you know, kind of like languages that the machines needed in order to, you know, communicate effectively with each other, basically. TCP and then IP are the two big ones, right? Okay, so and those still work. And then you got the internet, right? Which, as they mentioned down at the bottom of the slide, Tim Berners-Lee, father of the World Wide Web. So, as they mentioned, that was Berners-Lee, basically a researcher working at CERN, which was a physics research outfit, and just wanted to give researchers a way of sharing their latest data. And so set up a system on a computer in his office, actually a single server protocol where everything had an address which began with www. And so you could, you know, as a scientist, you could post your latest data. Oh, we did this run last week. We, you know, got this data. And you could put it up at an address, and then everybody would be able to download it and work with it. Everyone at CERN or everyone connected to CERN throughout the world, you know. So it was a great, really fast way of sharing data and stuff, and that was the original idea. So you had that, and out of that came, you know, a great way to order socks and pizzas or whatever. So the internet, the cliche is it's a network of networks. It's just computers all over the place. Well, at least 50 million users at that point, where we'd call it a mass medium, containing text, graphics, sound, and video. So all of that slowly became a possibility and was, you know, necessarily, first of all, held back by those old modems. You know, they could transmit 56 kilobits of information per second, but now your basic Comcast or AT&T DSL connection, you know, your basic speeds are in the 5 megabits per second, you know, and then if you're using a digital connection, like a fiber connection, like Sonic's been bringing that to San Francisco area recently. So that would get you up to maybe 800 megabits per second in terms of data transfer. Dylan?
When you say fiber, you mean like fiber optic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, a big limitation of those speeds was having to use the copper telephone line that was going into your house. So now, do we have any Sonic users apart from myself? No? Monkey Brain? Anything like that? Anybody?
I've never heard of these. I had Sonic, but
You had
I just moved, so...
Now are you back to Comcast or something?
Yeah.
Did it slow noticeably?
Actually, I think our Comcast is a little faster, but it was more just a problem with our old router. I think we got a better router with it faster.
I know that, I mean, a friend is like a Comcast installer, and he said, yeah, Comcast will like match that within a year. So they may well have matched Sonic's speed now as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just getting faster and faster. And then Monkey Brain is a system which uses microwave to send you the internet. So if you're down in the Mission around there, they'll only wire up entire apartment buildings and stuff, but not individuals. But you know, they'll give you the equivalent of a CATV type of connection where they'll put a receiver on your roof, and then everyone can draw on that. So those are high speeds as well. So yeah, it's just the limitations of being around getting a fast enough connection to effectively deliver graphics and video and stuff. But it's there. It's just, there's continual demand for more and more they call it bandwidth, right? Because everyone's streaming Netflix movies on a Friday night. It can slow down noticeably. Yeah. So how the internet works, as we said, it's a packet switched network. So just remember that any content will be split into packets and sent over the network. And in fact, that's how mobile telephones work as well, with packet switching of your voice. Right? 'Cause that's the most effective way of using a network, is to split it into packets and then reassemble them at the other end. So there's when your browser, for instance, you click on a link and you want the page to load up, you're the client, and your browser is talking to the server saying, okay, give me this page, right? And then a router allows several devices to receive those packets, and basically with one address, one connection, the router can nonetheless send the packets to the right place. So you can have many users at one connection. So that's important. And then we mentioned the DNS, the domain name system. So that's kind of like providing an easier layer for us humans to work with on top of the internet. So the basic internet access, or the basic any network, is going to have like a series of numbers like that, which define a location. So DNS, the domain name system, basically says, okay, that's not too easy for any of us to remember, right? But we can, on top of that, we can give things real names, and then have a system which says that every time you type in that, the computer actually goes looking for that, right? So that's the domain name system, basically, which, early in the day, I remember people were auctioning off like McDonald's.com and that type of thing. People would jump in there and buy those names as quickly as they could, and then try to sell them to the rightful users and stuff. So there was a business in domain names and stuff, it didn't profit ICANN, which is the organization which assigns those names and connects them to numbers. That was it. Okay. And then, first of the browsers, I always think of Mosaic as being the first browser, although they came up with another name there that I guess Berners-Lee and those folks had used. But the important thing about Mosaic was that it became the basis for Netscape, and Netscape was, in the mid-90s, the internet browser, right? So we're talking about currently Chrome, Explorer, Firefox, and in fact, Netscape became Firefox after it flopped as a competitive web browser. Basically, Microsoft put it out of business. The code was contributed to Firefox, and so Netscape has become Firefox now with many modifications and stuff. Because back at that time, it was purely documents that were being hyperlinked. So you could click on a link to get to see a document, but the dial-up was too slow in order to get streaming audio, or certainly not streaming videos. So that's what led to that. But with the increasing speed of the connections, especially that last connection to the consumer, radio and TV stations have finally been able to extend themselves onto the web. I think I got another video which is pertinent. The World Wide Web. Okay. So this is another kind of rapid catch-up, but this will tell you more about the beginnings of the web with Berners-Lee.
The World Wide Web, where you're likely watching this video, is used by millions of people every day, for everything from checking the weather, ordering food, and chatting with friends, to raising funds, sharing news, or starting revolutions. We use it from our computers, our phones, even our cars. It's just there, all around us, all the time. But what is it exactly? Well, first of all, the World Wide Web is not the internet, even though the terms are often used interchangeably. The internet is simply the way computers connect to each other in order to share information. When the internet first emerged, computers actually made direct calls to each other. Today, networks are all around us, so computers can communicate seamlessly. The communication enabled through the internet has many uses, such as email, file transfer, and conferencing. But the most common use is accessing the World Wide Web. Think of the web as a bunch of skyscrapers, each representing a web server, a computer always connected to the internet, specifically designed to store information and share it. When someone starts a website, they are renting a room in this skyscraper, filling it with information and linking that information together in an organized way for others to access. The people who own these skyscrapers and rent space in them are called web hosts, but anyone can set up a web server with the right equipment and a bit of know-how. There's another part to having a website without which we would be lost in the city with no way of finding what we need. This is the website address, which consists of domain names. Just like with a real-life address, a website address lets you get where you want to go. The information stored in the websites is in web languages, such as HTML and JavaScript. When we find the website we're looking for, our web browser is able to take all the code on the site and turn it into words, graphics, and videos. We don't need to know any special computer languages because the web browser creates a graphic interface for us. So in a lot of ways, the World Wide Web is a big virtual city where we communicate with each other in web languages, with browsers acting as our translators. And just like no one owns a city, no one owns the web. It belongs to all of us. Anyone can move in and set up shop. We might have to pay an internet service provider to gain access, a hosting company to rent web space, or a registrar to reserve our web address. Like utility companies in a city, these companies provide crucial services, but in the end, not even they own the web. But what really makes the web so special lies in its very name. Prior to the web, we used to consume most information in a linear fashion. In a book or newspaper article, each sentence was read from beginning to end, page by page, in a straight line until you reached the end. But that isn't how our brains actually work. Each of our thoughts is linked to other thoughts, memories, and emotions in a loose, interconnected network, like a web. Tim Berners-Lee, the father of the World Wide Web, understood that we needed a way to organize information that mirrored this natural arrangement. And the web accomplishes this through hyperlinks. By linking several pages within a website or even redirecting you to other websites to expand on information or ideas immediately as you encounter them, hyperlinks allow the web to operate along the same lines as our thought patterns. The web is so much a part of our lives because in content and structure, it reflects both the wider society and our individual minds. And it connects those minds across all boundaries, not only ethnicity, gender, and age, but even time and space.
Cool. So what do you think of that idea that the structure of the web somehow replicates, some of our thought structures and the way that we think associatively, like branching off instead of in a very linear way? How does that strike you as an idea?
What's the question?
Yeah.
Okay, so they just put forth the idea that the structure of the internet or of the World Wide Web, let's wind that back. The structure of the World Wide Web with the ability to organize information as kind of nodes that lead off into other associations and stuff is maybe a more humanly effective way of organizing than in a very linear way that, let's say, they drew a picture of like encyclopedias, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, A, B, C, D, and E, versus, the kind of associative structure of the internet, of the World Wide Web. Why do I keep doing that? Which is branching. So what do you think about that as an idea? When you're working on the web, how do you find yourself consuming information versus imagine yourself going through the stacks in a library? Let's say you're super fast, you can pull out any book or whatever, but how does that differ that way of organizing information from this? And do you think this is more humanly accessible? Yeah, Dylan, you're thinking?
I'd say it's probably more humanly accessible because that's just kind of like how, like it was saying, like our brains work is we kind of like, we'll have an idea and it'll kind of like branch off into different things, and that's kind of how I feel like we search through the web is like, you know, we have an idea, we'll search it, and we'll kind of lead you onto like this tangent of like other things that are like related to that idea.
Yeah, yeah. Do other people find that? Is that necessarily a positive thing, or sometimes do we fall down a rabbit hole and
Kind of like a double-edged sword.
double-edged sword? That's interesting. Tell us more.
It's kind of like easier to keep yourself entertained by, you know, having so many links or like just so many different branches you could take versus like if you're trying to read a book, it's like sometimes it could be hard to like continue to follow through the entire time.
Yeah.
Whereas with the internet, you could do anything you want. You could go in any direction, but at the same time, you know, you could waste a lot of time.
Yeah.
Just doing a lot of stupid stuff.
Right. That actually reminds me of our textbook, right? Which is all, it's broken down into section, subsection, bolded, and so it's like very linear, you know, versus the same information is out there on the internet, but you know, you could click and then eventually like fall down the rabbit hole of, you know, Vincent Cerf.
How did I get here?
Yeah, right. Which is sometimes, you know, maybe I should set a time limit as to how much I do this before I sit back and try to organize it in my head into some kind of structure, and then maybe I dive back in. I don't know. I mean, because I've spent a lot of time doing, you know, sort of research, doing a PhD or whatever, you do that, and that was one of my experiences. Was you could like fall down the rabbit hole, and then you'd have to stop and say, okay, what did I actually learn there? What do I need to still learn more about? And then you could dive back into it, you know. And I think it's just, you know, compared to now, you know, 2000 when I was doing what I was doing to now, I mean, this is even more kind of enveloping, you know, because you can find so much about it. So there's actually a term for sort of aimlessly browsing, which they call ritualistic viewing. So that is that would be you know, classic case of it would be you get on the internet and within a minute or two you're just like surfing all over the place, you know, and you're spending time without necessarily a very focused goal in mind, which can be, you know, fascinating and pleasant and rewarding, and you can discover stuff, but it can also, you know, take a lot of time. So that could be one, you know, one aspect of it. I'm just checking this out. Where are we here with this? Oh my God, I've run far afield here in terms of some of the topics we wanted to talk about. But I wonder, can you search well, anyhow, just bear that in mind that that's the term for getting deeply into something without knowing exactly why you're doing it anymore. So there's that one. Yeah, so as we said, just this idea down here, but just to repeat something that's important to remember really is, you know, what held back, I would say, the integration of all forms of media on the web was really bandwidth, you know, bandwidth constraints. You can have unlimited space for information on the internet, but where the bottleneck happens is not in terms of everything you can store, but rather how quickly you can download it. And that's what they would call bandwidth. You know, the faster you can download stuff, you know, think of it as a pipe. The wider the pipe, the more you can download. And so that's really what, you know, when they talk about broadband, the pipe is wide and you can get more data down it, which means you can watch 4K video streamed from Netflix, and you know, there's not a lot of lag or of problems there. So the bandwidth really is what has held back the convergence and the multimedia kind of and web that we know it now. But and that is, you know, I mean, you could assume that bandwidth is just going to get broader and broader. You know? So that's pretty cool. So, you know, it's because audio takes relatively less data than video. The first of our broadcast type media that moved over onto the web was radio. So in today's market, we see, rather than radio necessarily competing against the web, it's often given an extension to the radio business, which allows them to, stream over the internet as well and reach a whole bunch of other clients that way. And I guess iHeartRadio would be the best example of that, which is a gigantic business, Clear Channel, a company which made its name on terrestrial radio, but rebranded itself for the future as an internet or, kind of dual platform delivery. Definitely World Wide Web radio is, they're the biggest player in that. And it matches what they do in terrestrial radio a lot. We're just getting our college radio station back up and streaming here. And again, those who've already come in and seen, I saw Kwame today putting together the final link of our, ability to take our radio studio here, which was designed for old terrestrial radio, and, stream to Live 365, a service on the web. And so we're going to have web radio probably starting next week, I think. So, which is totally cool. And college radio led the way for sure. Napster in 1999. Wow. So that's been a huge disruption. Everyone knows that history. No need to really recount it again. But Napster is being basically a tool for aggregating all of the individual MP3s that were stored on different web servers all over the place. So everything stored on a web server has a unique address, and by creating software that could, record where all of those files existed without necessarily having to collect them onto your own server, allowed Napster to, for a while, to provide this service which would direct users to the music they wanted without being legally liable for the fact that it was copyright infringement. So Napster did well enough until the Digital Millennium Copyright Act changed those rules, gave the government the tools to shut down those kinds of aggregators. So if you hear about Napster now, it bears no resemblance to what it used to be, but it is, as a brand, it's very well known. So I think it's being revived. Does anyone know about current Napster? What's up with it? Well, we won't jump down that rabbit hole today, but I do see it out there now, but not in any way in its own, what it used to be doing. So, and there's those scare stories about the trying to sue people for piracy. So that's it. And I think the emergence of streaming services like Spotify, Pandora, and also being able to monetize your songs on YouTube now somewhat reliably. I think that's maybe tip the balance so that people will there's enough convenience there in order to get people to pay again for music that in the end of the 90s and early aughts people were just downloading illegally because it was more convenient and free. So now they've made it more convenient to actually pay a small price, which is, I think, more fair to the creators. Although apparently it's still hard to really do well on a system, So the DMCA set up a digital copyright, digital rights collection service, which currently gives an artist, I think it's 7.7 cents per stream of a song. So it's not a lot. You have to have a lot of streams in order to make money in that environment. But it's that currently is the price for streaming music. So, for instance, in our Live 365, what they do for us, which is the online radio app that we'll be using to create our channel for KCSF, our radio station, we pay them a $60 a month blanket fee, and they take care of paying all those rights. And they have a kind of a tiered system so that we can't have that many streams going at once before we cross a threshold, and we have to pay them $100 a month or something like that. And the reason that threshold is there is that, you know, they're looking at their profits, and they have to pay this, you know, based on, so they cap us at a certain amount. And when we cross that threshold, they ask us for more money because, you know, they're part of that money is going to be paying the rights for those streams. So, you know, all of that is regulated to give creators a certain amount of money. It means that you just can't, you know, get on the web and broadcast for free, which is. And then, you know, looking at video moving over onto the web. So obviously, YouTube was you know the breakthrough point, and I think it was. Whoops, boy, some of these slides don't give us too much. You know, 2006. With the founding of YouTube, and within a year afterwards, Google bought it, and then you know, developed it from what we've seen, which is originally like a user-generated content platform, to now, you know, it remains that, but it also has channels dedicated to, you know, different corporate entities that are making money that way. And then YouTube itself has YouTube Red. Oh, goodness. Sorry about that. YouTube Red, which is original programming, and then now they're even offering cable bundles, skinny cable bundles, in order to, you know, you can get live cable TV through YouTube as well. So they've really diversified the service, right? And then Netflix, of course, coming in. So I guess we're getting ahead because these slides usually talk about the history and then about, you know, increasingly we're seeing, obviously, you know, the latest area for expansion is getting your internet connection through your phone. So mobile, accessing the internet, and also Wi-Fi in the home or in a school like this, obviously makes getting the internet that much. Those are both important developments. And let's see. Yeah, so we did explain a little bit how resources reside on the internet. So the item that you may want to download, or every item that's made, you know, the code that makes up your web page, for instance, is possibly stored on a bunch of different servers. And as you know, you click on the web page and it starts to load up in your browser, the browser calls out to all of those different elements that are brought together in your browser as fast as it can load up, which could contain all of the text, graphics, audio, video. Of course, all of it is fundamentally just digital information. But it may be pulling from all kinds of different servers. So HTML, the language of the World Wide Web, so that's part of what Berners-Lee put together. And so HTML standing for Hypertext Markup Language. So as we said, the important thing about hypertext in its original textual form was that it could give you clickable links out to other resources. And now HTML has been through many generations. I think we're still at HTML5 right now, so the 5th generation of HTML, which it continually grows and accommodates more resources. So there'd be like, native video now. It used to be you have to have a software plug-in to play video, and now HTML5 can handle video, can handle audio, it can handle other forms of interactive games and stuff like that. So Flash was a very widely used plug-in, which is being eliminated now. So a lot of games will run in Flash, but most browsers now will sort of say, hey, this is a pretty risky thing. You really want to use this Flash thing? So that's being phased out. Yeah.
Is Flash sort of like the same thing as like Silverlight?
So Silverlight is a Microsoft
Flash
protocol.
is Adobe, right?
Yeah, Flash is Adobe. So I know Flash more as, for all kinds of simple games, which is kind of like providing an environment for those interactive games to happen. Whereas Silverlight, I think, is like a streaming helper.
Yeah.
So like Netflix, for instance,
Exactly.
it goes, probably you don't even remember it, but the first time you subscribe, you have to install Silverlight. Yeah. So Silverlight, I know part of what's interesting there is it can sense the speed of the connection, and that's what allows Netflix to sort of send you a better quality or automatically adjust on the fly the kind of quality that your video stream will have. Yeah.
So like how you see, like if you were to start a stream, it'd be kind of grainy, and then it would get into like HD.
Yeah, and I've often wondered whether that's not also something they tweak. Basically, you're not going to care how good the credits look or the first 5 or 10 seconds of the stream.
Yeah.
But it's true, consistently, it's always pretty low resolution, and then it bumps it up to whatever your connection can actually handle.
That's interesting.
And if you're going through Amazon. It's interesting because Netflix uses Amazon's servers as their, all of their stuff is stored on the Amazon server farm. They have a gigantic data farm, and Netflix is a client, but Amazon stuff seems to me to run way worse than Netflix. So I don't know. Anyway, yeah, in the midst of Amazon streaming, you'll lose a lot of quality in there. Bump back up. Well, there you go. So I mean, those are a couple of they would be working on basically TCP or IP protocols, but they're additional technologies that do stuff, right? And Flash is on its way out, but HTML is continually being updated to do more and more, and it's regarded as a more secure proposition. There's also, teaching one of the writing classes, there's some very cool multimedia stuff being done by the New York Times or by the Washington Post. And Rolling Stone magazine had some really good kind of HTML5 work where basically, the stories, as you scroll through a story, like video windows will expand and they'll start playing automatically, and graphics will just appear. So there's a much more fluid display of information with HTML5, and it'll play you audio, it'll play you video, and so basically it'll allow you to do things like zoom into a picture as well, and so we're only just scratching the surface of that kind of new display technology, and VR will be coming into this as well, so it'll be very cool in terms of information display. Just to point out, as they said, the web is not the internet itself. The internet as a network of computers is it's the infrastructure for the web, but email has a separate set of protocols. Skype, if you do any, that works with a different protocol, which is, TCP/IP is a protocol which wants to give you all the information. If it takes a split second longer to get your web page all assembled, it'll make you wait, right? But Skype, it can't make you wait because the conversation sucks. And so Skype works on a different protocol which privileges just speed. It's like get that conversation to me as quickly as possible. If it's a little, low res or something, that's okay. And so there are, different FTP. I mean, if you've had a website yourself, so that is file transfer protocol. So that's a different protocol, which is, just there to move files from your computer up into a server or something else. FTP is a different protocol. So there, on the internet, a bunch of different protocols can be operative, But the World Wide Web is, the one we use the most, basically. But there are those other ones. So just remember, that the internet is not just the web. It's all those other things in the same. We talked about royalty fees for internet transmission as being like 7 cents a stream, which really limits the number of people who can play in online radio, I guess. Yeah, so there's that little point there about, when you fall down the rabbit hole, you just go to the web and start consuming content versus an instrumental use, which would be more goal-oriented. As we said, a lot of new media is just based on the content of old media. So, we're seeing on the web textual form, we're seeing old newspapers. Basically, the newspaper industry is being, completely remade based on web delivery. There's all kinds now of web publications that are out there. I think Vice was an old giveaway magazine in my hometown, and then it became, a pretty big player in online information, video. Now there's Viceland on HBO, so they're kind of, building out on all the different platforms, their stuff. So I think that would be pertinent to the idea of, what's happening to TV based on the internet. On the one, it's changing everything, but it's hard to say. It's definitely taking viewers from terrestrial TV, having them watch content online. But all of the terrestrial TV businesses are now, making sure that they've got, online distribution systems. A CBS as a network is, going to stream its own content. It's going to also, make sure that it owns all of the shows that it now broadcasts, because it views broadcasting as a way just of getting people to know those shows. And eventually 10 years from now, they'll still want to, stream them from CBS and stuff. Those cable TV companies like Comcast, they recognize that people are not subscribing to their cable TV channels as much anymore, so they're changing their business to be IP, internet providers, internet ISPs, internet service providers and stuff. So it's a great question as to whether web is stealing television's viewers, but when you look at what's actually going on, it's like everything is in transition, and they're changing all that. So, the way that's going. Cool. So I may have missed a few things, but this is tiresome. So let's get into a Kahoot and just shoot those questions at you, and so you know what you need to remember from today's express visit to the internet. Next week we'll talk about social media. We may have a guest in as well. Just trying to find out more about that. So we will keep you posted on that, and we may have a chance to talk more about, what's relevant to our course. All right, only 9 questions today. Woohoo! Are you ready? Who's the father of the internet? Was it Tim Berners-Lee or Vint Cerf? So remember, the World Wide Web is not the internet. Did everyone have a chance to vote? All right, so the correct answer is Vint Cerf. So he's the guy who came up with TCP. Okay, so he's the father of the internet. I guess Tim Berners-Lee would be the father of the World Wide Web. Okay, so there's that one. So remember, Vint Cerf with TCP, the basic protocol. The web, all right, let's move. The internet is a packet switched network. True or false? All right, good job, folks. 7 people got it right. Only 1 person not. So yeah, remember any information that's going to cross the network is going to be split up into packets. That way, it can move most effectively through the internet. It can, take whatever route is the fastest, and then the packets get reassembled back at the client that is kind of called for all that content. Cool. All right. Next. As we move ahead, okay, some kind of viewing is when we use the net out of habit without a clear goal. So like when you fall down a rabbit hole and you forget why you were looking at all this information. What is that called? All right, great job. 8 people, everyone got it right. Ritualistic viewing. Yeah, it's ritualistic viewing. Because otherwise it would be instrumental viewing when you actually want to find some specific information. Online data is limitless, but speed is controlled by what? So you can have as much stuff on the internet as you like, but what's the bottleneck? All right, 7 people. All right, this is great. Bandwidth, that's right. So bandwidth is what limits the speed at which it's going to come into your home. And that was crucial. You know, it kept video out of the internet for a while until the internet speeded up enough. All right, what type of app helps you surf the web? What do we call that app? By app, we mean program on your computer or smartphone. All right, 6 people got it right. So who was, okay. So modem, so that would be like historically that was the hardware that allowed you to access the internet. It stands for modulator, demodulator, and what it basically did was it would turn data into audio that could be sent down a telephone line. But we don't use that anymore because it was so slow. And then the other wrong answer was URL, so that's a uniform resource locator. So as we said, everything on the web has its own specific address, every little picture, every little thing, and that is a URL. That's what the URL is. Okay. So, but 6 people got browser, so that's the name of the application that we access the web through. How much do webcasters pay in royalty fees? 0.07 cents per listener per song, or 10% of overall annual revenue? Awesome. Okay, so 5 people got that right. I did write that up there. So that is what the DMCA. It's called Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange is what they created, which is the organization which collects fees for every time there's a stream on the internet. So 0.07 cents per listener per song is correct. This is not entirely irrelevant. Radio stations, terrestrial radio stations, pay 10% of their overall annual revenue to ASCAP, BMI, CSAC for the rights to play the music that they play. That's, by terrestrial radio, I mean FM and AM radio. So that's how they pay. But this is how streaming radio pays. By per
song.
Per song, yeah. And let me just say, I was like, what a day for me. But you know, what this means is if you're a radio station and you suddenly get incredibly popular, it's kind of indirect. You know, at the end of the day, you know, depending on how many ads you pay, you wind up paying 10% of what you got. You know, so that's cool. Versus this, if all of a sudden everybody starts streaming your content, you may not, you know, really be compensated for the incredible cost increase, the immediate cost increase that represents. If you have, you know, I don't know, an exclusive comedy show on your service, and all of a sudden, you know, somebody tweets it and 100,000 people want it, that's going to cost you immediately a ton of money before you've actually made anything from advertising. So it's a lot harder to cope with success that way. Streaming technology, what about it? Okay, complete the phrase. Streaming technology leaves user with a file that they can share on their computer, or streaming technology pushes a continuous flow of data through the net. Okay, I didn't explain this one to you, but this is a good, all right, 7 people got it right, which is great. Streaming technology pushes a continuous flow of data through the net. I wanted to bring this up when I was going to talk about the difference between podcasting and streaming audio. So, you know, an audio stream like Spotify, you have to be connected to the internet in order to, you know, get the data onto your phone and play it back, because files are not downloaded from this service into your phone. Or if it is, there's a whole system of password protection where you can't, transfer it off into another device. Versus something like podcasting, which leaves a file on a computer that somebody could copy, share, or whatever. So you may notice there's not a lot of podcasts that release, current music, because it's an invitation to piracy. So the industry likes to keep music and video streaming versus, podcasts are usually like radio talk shows or something like that, which is far less attractive to pirate, and then, they don't have much value outside of a podcast versus if we podcast music, there's a cost. Okay. Short episodes on YouTube are called webisodes. Sure they are. Okay. So. All right, yes, that's true. They are called webisodes, and we talked about, again, I didn't complete all my thoughts here, but if the content of a new medium is often old media, something that's new in terms of web video are these short 2, 3, 4 minute webisodes, which never would have happened in broadcast TV, but they do happen on the web. All right. Question 9 of 9. The web is great for news because, so what sounds right there? So multiple answers are possible here. So choose as many as you like, but there's one that's wrong. The web, it's got great instant update of breaking news. It's got limitless space. It's got totally reliable information. And it's got multimedia presentation of stories. What sounds wrong there? Okay, I'm surprised I misled. Oh, okay. Well, actually, this is probably just my bad construction of a Kahoot, really. Because the one that's great for news, because, okay, you guys did fantastic. This is the only one that's wrong. Totally reliable information. All right. I don't know how to interpret Kahoot yet, but yeah, that's it. So folks did well. Because nobody chose totally reliable information, which of course would be. So H, let's hear for H, for Jonah, for Ivan. Okay, fantastic. Okay, that's it for today. I'll let you know about guest opportunities next week. We may have someone in to talk about social media. Otherwise, if you have a question about the assignment, shoot me an email through Canvas. I'm sort of always on it, especially Sunday night, because I have an online class I have to deal with. So, okay? And if you want, I have a couple of minutes if you have a quick question after class.